Hello, I'm Joseph McKeown. This is number 0668, the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0668. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, John Christmas, co-author of the geopolitical thriller KGB Banker, inspired by his own story taking place on the Russia-Ukraine border. John worked in banking and became a whistleblower trying to expose fraud that he uncovered without realizing that the bank in question was a KGB front.
Originally, I was a banker in America, and I got recruited to work for this bank in Latvia. I was very fearful, and I had some real experiences that most people never will have of meeting FBI agents, meeting people from the Russian embassy as well who appeared to be spies for Russia. So I met with the American spies and the Russian spies. I gave over all this information, and I just left.
Thordur O. Thordarson, manager of the Icelandic Phallological Museum, probably the only museum in the world to contain a collection of phallic specimens belonging to all the various types of mammals. How did this museum begin?
We began in 1997, but collection actually began in 74. Our founder always said, I never liked to collect stamps. Truth be told, it began as a joke, which developed into a passion, and eventually his wife said, you can't keep the peanuts at the house anymore.
Science writer Andrew Fazekas, the night sky guy, on the Boeing Starliner test flight to the International Space Station.
Boeing has seemed to have had a lot of problems getting it off the ground, their Starliner spacecraft, and finally they had their first uncrewed test. They had a mannequin on board with 15 sensors named Rosie that was basically there to kind of mimic what a live human would actually experience during this 6-day mission. And basically we saw it unfold fairly well, but it wasn't without problems.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news and, of course, an idiot of the day. The guest slater, the person who told you this was show number 0668, was Joseph McKeown, who is the product adoption specialist at Lightspeed Software Company, and an all-around nice guy. Thank you very much, Joseph, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make the show an even bigger and better radio experience. Now, let's get right to the stuff. Things got heated in a Pasadena, Maryland community on May 31st. As residents waited for their mail, two letter carriers, one male, one female, got into a fight in the street.
Letters, we get letters, we get stacks and stacks of letters.
One resident described the scene as her young grandson witnessed it.
He said that the one punched the window on the other one's mail truck. The one backed up and slammed into the other one like bumper cars.
Another witness, Brenda Ripto, said,
they kept going round and round the block, and at one point they were front to front, hitting their bumpers together. I mean, it was a mess. The guy in the one mail truck got out and punched the window of the female mail truck. Then she started throwing mail at him, and mail was going everywhere, all over the street.
Residents called 911, and the Postal Service sent other carriers to pick up the mail, which was all recovered and delivered by 7 p.m. People along the route said their regular carrier was on vacation, so the angry stand-ins were unfamiliar to them. Well, I guess this pair of postal employees, who clearly went, postal, won't be vying for Employee of the Month. Elsewhere, in an effort to better educate the world about the human reproductive system, the intimate wellness brand Intimina has introduced Period Crunch, a breakfast cereal with uterus-shaped raspberry-flavored pieces that will color the milk red. Alongside the startling cereal shape and red milk, the cereal box will feature a diagram of the female reproductive system so that people can learn about its location and function. The company surveyed 2,000 adults and discovered that 48% of women are embarrassed to talk about their menstrual period, and 77% have never brought it up in their households. Said Dr. Sri Datta, a gynecologist with Intamina, periods are a natural part of who we are, so it's deeply concerning to hear that so many people remain uncomfortable discussing them when they are just another part of our health. Really? In that case, I can't wait for your next cereal, Prostate Crunch. And I can just see the Saturday morning commercials for both products. Orwell, Ohio police called the Ashtabula County Sheriff's Office to help them corral a drunk driving suspect on May the 14th. But it wasn't your typical reckless operator. 21-year-old Nathan Miller was charged with OVI, operating a vehicle while intoxicated, for driving his horse-drawn Amish buggy on the wrong side of the road. We've seen far too many of these stories, haven't we, in the past? Anyway, officers were able to get in front of the horse and buggy, but the rig didn't stop. It turned out Miller was passed out in the driver's seat. While deputies tried to get control of the horse, it crashed into a patrol car. Miller was treated for injuries at the scene. Okay, so Miller was passed out, but also was the horse blind? I mean, why did it run into a patrol car? Maybe we need to have a field sobriety test for the horse, too. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, with me, Peter Anthony Holder, during a May 24th broadcast on the BBC of the French Open Tennis Championship, the news ticker at the bottom of the screen briefly read, "Manchester United are rubbish." Oopsie. Later, BBC anchor Anita McVeigh issued an on-air apology.
A little earlier, some of you may have noticed something pretty unusual on the ticker that runs along the bottom of the screen with news, making a comment about Manchester United, and I hope that Manchester United fans weren't offended by it. Let me just explain what was happening. Behind the scenes, someone was training to learn how to use the ticker and to put text on the ticker, so they were just writing random things, not in earnest, and that comment appeared. So apologies if you saw that and you were offended and you're a fan of Manchester United, but certainly that was a mistake and it wasn't meant to appear on the screen. So that was what happened. We just thought we'd better explain that to you.
Do you get the feeling that the trainee will no longer be training? As someone who spent years in television and also worked a chyron or two, or ticker as some people refer to it, I can understand how this might be a fireable offense, but not for the reasons you think. Typing Manchester United are rubbish might be a correct journalistic statement. I haven't checked the standings, so I can't be sure. But any chyron operator worth their salt, especially at the venerable BBC, knows that the correct term isn't Manchester United are rubbish, but rather Manchester United is rubbish. And for that, dear newbie, please leave your security pass at the door with the guard as you leave. Anyway, let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? John Christmas is the co-author of the geopolitical thriller KGB Banker, which was inspired by his own story and takes place on the Russia-Ukraine border. John has lived a very interesting life. While heading up an international banking group, John tried to expose fraud he uncovered without realizing that the bank in question was a KGB front. John joins us via Zoom from Malta. Hi, John.
Hi, Peter. Thank you for inviting me on your show.
Thanks for being on the program with us. As I mentioned, you are in Malta. When all this took place, you had to leave the country. Where were you initially located?
Well, this bank that recruited me, originally I was a banker in America, and I got recruited to work for this bank in Latvia, which is a former Soviet country in Eastern Europe. And I accepted the job. I had a connection with Latvia that my mother was born there. Some of this is in the book because the character in the book also is a American banker who gets recruited to represent this bank in Latvia and feels like he's moving back to the homeland, but then gets in a whole lot of trouble.
So how closely to real life is your novel that you co-authored, KGB Banker?
Well, some things we put in which are accurate is that there was this huge bank fraud or system of bank frauds which looted out billions of dollars from Latvia, Moldova, and Ukraine. And also in the book, we predict that the Kremlin is organizing this to prepare for an attack. Now, what we've seen since the book has been published is that there has been actually an attack against one of those countries, against Ukraine. Moldova and Latvia could be next. But we set this up on the border of Ukraine and Russia, and what we've put into the fraud has played out in reality, sadly. But that was the idea, is the Kremlin softens up these countries through bank frauds, looting out the banking systems and the governments, and then prepares them for attack.
As I said, you were a whistleblower, and you blew the whistle on this whole thing, and then that's when you realized it was a KGB front, and you had to leave the country. Just how fearful were you at the time?
Well, I was very fearful, and I had some real experiences that most people never will have, of meeting FBI agents, meeting people from the Russian embassy as well who appeared to be spies for Russia. So I met with the American spies and the Russian spies. I gave over all this information, and I just left. But the book that I put together with my co-author, William Burton McCormick, who was living in Ukraine when I was living in Latvia, the book that we put together, it follows the basic fraud where there's a whistleblower who learns that this bank is a KGB Russian mafia front. He gives the information to all these people. There's Russian intelligence and American intelligence involved. Then in the book, we have more drama. We have an escape, and we have people chasing him, and we have dangerous, beautiful women and so forth in the book. Now, in my real story, I just bought an airplane ticket and I left. So my real escape was much easier than the one that we make for the character in the book. But the fraud roughly follows the real fraud, and there's a cover-up as well by a development bank, which in real life was the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, but in the book we change it into the International Development Bank. But these development banks in real life have contributed to a lot of the corruption problems in Eastern Europe, and it was one of the themes we wanted to expose.
Well, even though you embellished a little bit of the story for the point of the book, the basis of the story is based literally on real life, and as you know, Moscow, Russia, has a very long memory and holds a grudge. So are you still fearful for your life?
Well, I don't put on Facebook where I live, and I don't talk about certain personal things with people who I don't know. Like if somebody sends me a friend request or a connection request and wants to meet for coffee, I don't automatically run out to go have coffee with them unless we have some common friends or something like this. So yeah, I am a little bit aware for the rest of my life. I mean, I hope nothing's going to happen to me, but I thought this was important. I mean, this is about countries that are getting crushed right now by Russia.
Okay, so going back to the whole situation, I want to delve into your fears at that time, and by that I mean, what were you really afraid of? Were you really afraid of Russia coming after you and perhaps even killing you? Or were you afraid of the idea of perhaps Russia framing you in some way that you would now become a target of U.S. justice?
Well, the way things played out, which was different from what I expected, is I trusted certain organizations, including the Western Auditor, including the Western ratings agencies, including the United States government, the British government, even the Latvian government. I thought when I gave them this information that they were going to crack down on the crooks. Now, as it turned out, what they did is they did a cover-up for the crooks. They did this fake privatization of the looted bank to this European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. I mean, this has already been years ago. It's already been reversed back again, but that was a fake privatization to cover up. And, I'm angry at these people. Like, why did they do this? They had this whistleblowing information. They could have shut down these oligarchs, but instead they spent tax money to cover up for them. So, I mean, I don't know what any of these people are thinking. A lot of it is this. Russian intelligence is really devious. I mean, they trick people all the time, and people will tell you that, I'm not against the Russians. They'll say that I'm on the side of the Russians and I'm slandering Latvia because I'm a malicious person or something. But the way things get turned around, or that they have an organization which is supposed to be supporting independence and democracy, but really it's not, because really it's supporting Putin's money laundering. They set up these sorts of things. But this is real. It's really going on.
What time frame did this whole thing take place when you were working with the banking system?
Oh, well, originally I gave information to the Western auditor. And then I went on a holiday for 2 weeks, actually expecting that the Western auditor was going to drop the bank and the bank was going to be shut down during this 2-week holiday. I had no idea that more than 10 years later, it still would be going on. I mean, now there's successor banks to the original bank, but essentially the same thing is going on. And then I was back in Latvia for a little while, packing up my stuff and living at a different address. And then I left again for good. So I left from there 2005. I was getting calls, warnings in 2006, like you cannot come back here, or like you will die if you come back to Latvia. And basically the police are on the same side with the mafia. These were the kinds of messages I was getting at that time. But, now years later, this Putin, his mafia has been stealing more and more money ever since then. And now there's even a war and he's making threats against everybody. So I'm happy I did it, but I wish that the Western authorities did what they were supposed to do.
And when did you and your co-author start writing this book?
We got introduced to each other because we had a mutual friend, and he told me that William Burton McCormick has published a historical novel about Latvia and Russia, and that you should meet him because he'd be really interested in your whistleblowing and exile story. So, it was a few years ago, I went to the Latvian house in London, England, actually, to meet Bill. And we had a week of brainstorming together. We got along great. That the themes we wanted to put in, the way he wanted to do the characters, he's got a real way with development of characters, also development of suspense. And we both were familiar with the area because he had been sometimes living in Ukraine and sometimes in Latvia as well. And I had been living in Latvia, and we both have been traveling in Russia. So we could put together the scene. We made the characters designed to put certain themes into the book. I mean, there's something about journalism in there. There's something about the heroes at the end of the day are the journalists who get the true story out. So you should appreciate that because you're on that side. But also things about failure of modern regulators and modern auditors, all this stuff we put in. But I think he did a great job of putting together the right characters and the right scenes to really put the excitement in there and put the important themes in there as well.
Did you ever think when you were putting together this idea for a book and you finally, wrote it and got it out there, that you would come up against what clearly has to be, from your book point of view, quite fortuitous with what's going on in Ukraine right now and what it is uncovering as far as Russia's involvement with oligarchs and the like?
Oh, sure. We have a villain who is a masterpiece created by Bill, my co-author. I can't take credit for this villain, but he sits on the border between Ukraine and Russia. He pays off all the right people. He says that he's providing a service, looting out these banks and paying off certain people because he's keeping the peace. And that's the guy who's the villain in the book. But there are real people in real life who were like this oligarch, who were somehow keeping this fragile peace between Russia and Ukraine and pacifying the people in the Kremlin by helping them to buy their super yachts.
Well, it's a fascinating story, and it's a story that is real, which even makes it more fascinating. John, I thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Thank you, Peter. So keep in mind, it's KGB Banker. It's kgbbanker.com is the website, and it's on Amazon in 3 versions. It's in print or Kindle or Audible.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Peter.
John Christmas, co-author of KGB Banker. You can go to my website at thestufffile.com to the page for this show, which is show number 0668, and you'll find links to John's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like, but the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestuffileprogram. You're listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. It's radio that puts a smile on your face and a skip in your step. Please avoid skipping if you are driving.
And still to come on the program, we'll share everything you need to know about the Icelandic Phallological Museum. Plus, science writer Andrew Fazekas, the night sky guy, talks about the Boeing Starliner test flight to the International Space Station. Of course, we have more Stuff File news and an idiot of the day coming your way. That's all here right now on the Stuff File program. So let's continue. In Parks, Louisiana, a rendering of the Last Supper in the St. Joseph Catholic Church has all the usual elements, plus one regionally iconic extra, a bottle of McElhenney's Tabasco hot sauce, conveniently placed in front of one of Jesus' disciples. Pastor Nicholas Dupree said after he arrived in the parish in 2019, he heard from Shane Bernard, a curator and historian from McElhenney, who wondered if the urban myth about the painting was true. When Dupree confirmed the product placement, Bernard sent a large commemorative collector's bottle of Tabasco. Christy Hebert, the artist, said she was asked not to make the painting an exact replica of the Da Vinci original. The priest at the time wanted to make it unique to our area, she said. Well, I've seen the painting. As someone who is myself religious, I have to take some offense to the artwork. The Tabasco bottle in question appears to have been placed in front of the disciple Philip. I mean, shouldn't it be in front of Judas Iscariot? Religious scholars, please weigh in. And we have a couple of crimes from criminals that are very particular. First, New York City police are on the hunt of a serial shoe thief. On 3 different occasions in January, February, and most recently on May 24th, a man has removed a shoe from a woman in Brooklyn or Queens. Twice it was a left shoe. One time it was the right. The incidents happen during the day in public areas. Well, I guess we're looking for a 3-legged pump pillager. Meanwhile, the investigation is ongoing in Trout Run, Pennsylvania, to find the hungry thief who on May 20th broke into the apartment of 26-year-old Tyler White, but stole only one item, a 5-pound bag of Mrs. T's pierogies. The burglar caused minor damage to drywall in the kitchen, but left all of White's other belongings untouched. The pierogies are valued at $10. Well, not only is there a pump pillager, but a pierogi pillager too. What a plethora of possibilities. The Polk County, Florida Sheriff's Office had a warrant for the arrest of 29-year-old April Gonzalez and received a tip that she was at a home in Lakeland When deputies arrived, 29-year-old Jonathan Fowler came out to meet them, locking the door behind him. According to deputies, Fowler said nobody else was in the house and refused to let them in without a warrant. Said the sheriff's office on their Facebook page, that seemed very peculiar, given the way in which he quickly locked and closed the door. Even peculiarer, is that even a word? Anyway, even peculiarer was how the lights began shutting off inside the empty residence and movement could be heard coming from within. The department also posted theories. Must have been termites or earwigs, ghosts maybe. When a canine deputy was brought to the scene, Fowler admitted Gonzalez was inside. She was arrested, as well as Fowler. Well, judging by the sheriff's office grammar on Facebook, I'm assuming that Fowler and Gonzalez's living arrangements just got even smallerer. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest, here on this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, a British Columbia music teacher who saw a bear lurking outside the school where he works managed to drive the animal away by playing the trombone. Tristan Clausen, a music teacher at St. John's Academy in Shawnigan Lake, said he was alerted to the presence of a bear sniffing around the wooden structure that houses the trash cans outside the school. Another teacher attempted to scare the bear away by banging on a door. Said Clausen, I thought, well, I can do better than that, and reached for my trombone and went out. A video recorded by the student shows the bear became startled by Clausen's playing and hurriedly leave the area. Said Clausen, he had a lot of attention in my direction and was figuring out what to do and decided discretion was the better part of valor. I'm trying not to take it personally. If that's the reaction that bears have when he plays, what's the reaction of his neighbors when he practices? Yeah. Anyway, let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? When you go to the website of the Icelandic Phallological Museum in Iceland, the first thing you read about the museum is, the Icelandic Phallological Museum is probably the only museum in the world to contain a collection of phallic specimens belonging to all of the various types of mammal found in a single country. Well, I'm sure there is no one who would doubt that statement. Thordur O. Thordarson is the manager of the Icelandic Phallological Museum, and he joins us via Zoom from Iceland. Hi, Thordur.
Hi. Thank you for having me, Peter.
Thanks for being on the program with us. When did this museum start? And I have to ask, why did this museum start?
Well, we began in 1997, but the collection actually began in 74. And on why, well, our founder always said that I never liked to collect stamps. And then he said, why not? But truth be told, it began as a joke, which developed into a passion. And eventually his wife said, you can't keep the penis at the house anymore.
So what did he start off with?
Well, he always spoke of, he lamented that people no longer utilized everything from the animals, like back in the day. And he said that, he told his friends that as a young boy, he had a bull penis pizzle. So as a joke, they gave him a bull penis pizzle, like they used to, collect sheep with here back in the day. But, this became an ongoing joke. Some of them worked in a slaughterhouse, others at a whaling station. Iceland used to be pretty big on whaling. So he was able to get quite a few large specimens.
Okay, so this is something I'm completely unaware of. So first of all, you have to explain to me what a pizzle is.
Well, a pizzle is like a small whip. It actually usually refers to like the dried sinews, a penis sinews from a bull, and it's used like a small whip. I know that in the Middle Ages in Germany, they were used for self-defense, like would-be robbers would not want to be beaten with a bull's penis. So, yeah. And, yeah, in Iceland, they were used to collect sheep.
When this collection first started, it started with a bull's penis. How did it grow to other phallic symbols?
Basically, yeah, our founder's friends worked at a whaling station, and as far as I know, like penis was something which was usually just thrown away. So those who had like summer jobs at the whaling station began bringing him penises from sperm whales and fin whales, stuff like that. And well, he got an idea that it would be interesting to own a penis of every mammal in Iceland. We have like a very small mammal like fauna. It's only about 30 animals. So the man was definitely the hardest to get.
There are 282 specimens, I understand, from 93 different species of animals.
Well, those are old statistics. We are in the process of updating our website. We are getting a totally new look. We are actually well over 350 specimens and over 120 species.
They include every form of mammal that we can discuss.
Yeah, pretty much. We have the entire Icelandic mammal fauna, but we have expanded into foreign mammals as well.
Dare I say, man is a mammal?
Yes.
Do you have a human member, so to speak?
Yes, we have a penis from a 95-year-old Icelandic bachelor, and well, I guess you could say an infamous womanizer. He claimed to have bedded over 300 women in his time.
Okay, how did you get that? Did he will it to you?
Yes, he did. He was well, not a friend, but an acquaintance of our founder, and he spoke much about how well he did with the ladies and how well endowed he was. So yeah, our founder kind of dared him to like donate, his penis post mortem, and the guy did it.
Wow. It's one thing for someone to say, I'm going to collect all of these. It's another thing for other people to say, yes, let's go to a museum and see it. So what was the leap when it came to deciding that not only was he going to collect them, but he was going to display them for anyone who wanted to see them?
Well, he was the kind of guy who always liked to push people's buttons and, not least his wife. And yeah, it's basically what happened as their living room became increasingly crowded with, amputated phalluses in jars. Like his wife just had enough, and he said like you can't keep him here anymore. And so he decided like a good way to keep on pushing people's buttons would be to open a museum. And of course, everybody here was like initially just, why would anybody do that? But it's kind of a live and let live, society. So, yeah.
But yet, as you say, even though most people say, why would you do that? The fact is he opened a museum and it seems to have a certain amount of success. So who's coming to the museum? And is it something that is actually a tourist attraction from people who are beyond your shores?
Yes. I'd say like well over 99% of our customers are foreigners. A lot of Canadians, a lot of Americans, a lot of people from Britain and mainland Europe. So, and also, China as well. I think we're doing, pretty well all over, basically.
Okay, well, the old saying, size matters. So let's talk about size. What's the smallest? What's the biggest?
Yes. Our biggest specimen is an average-sized adult sperm whale. It is about 170 centimeters long. You guys use the metric system in Canada, right?
Yes.
And about 75 kilos. And our smallest is a hamster penis bone. And interestingly, yes, carnivores generally have a bone in their penis.
You mentioned that there's over now 350 specimens in your museum. Is there a holy grail of phallic symbols or penises that you have not acquired yet that you're hoping to find?
I must say, no animal has ever been killed for its penis. No. That's kind of our policy. But we once got wind of that we would be getting a lion from Africa, but apparently it got lost on the way. So that would have been fun.
Okay, but a lion is not exactly a rare animal. They live, breed, and die with regularity. It seems like that's something you would already have had. It's not that rare.
No. There's a lot of paperwork to get them in here, and it was I heard it got lost somewhere in customs in Belgium. The lion penis, but we haven't had an offer yet. But we, there are lions dying in zoos all over the planet, I guess. So hopefully one day. Yeah.
Besides the lion, is there anything else that you feel you're missing?
Oh yeah. I mean, basically, we'd be happy to get anything. For instance, we like to get a younger male one day, but of course that'll be hard because I doubt that anybody would want to part with it prior to passing. Although we did have an offer from an American gentleman who wanted to donate his penis, but it never happened. So, but basically any mammal. Yeah.
What are the hours that you are open? Do you have a particular season, or are you open year-round? And if so, when?
We are open year-round, so every day of the week, except on Christmas Day and Easter Sunday. Those are the only 2 days that we're not open. We are open from 10 in the morning to 7 in the evening.
By the way, is your founder still alive?
Yes, he is. He occasionally comes here and is he occasionally comes by and kind of heckles the guests with uncomfortable questions. But yeah, it happens maybe once a month.
What kind of questions does he ask?
Did you know that an elephant can scratch itself with its penis? Stuff like that, But I don't know if he's giving them any difficult question or it's like a test afterwards, but kind of has fun with them in a nice way, I think. Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping the founder has a long and fruitful life, but when the end comes, is he thinking of putting his member in the museum?
Yes, he is. Yeah.
I've got nothing else to add to that.
Well, I mean, thank you so much just for having me. We're really, happy to reach people in Canada. And yeah, I just want to say, have you guys heard that we are getting a plaster cast made by the late Cynthia Alperton of Jimi Hendrix?
A plaster cast. Now, do you have more? Do you have other plaster casts as well, or is everything that you have besides this incoming Jimi Hendrix plaster cast an actual penis?
Well, we have a few not plaster casts, but we have a few silicone casts of would-be donors, but no one as notable as Jimmy.
Interesting job you have there, Thordur. Interesting job indeed. I thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
I thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Thank you for having me. By the way, it's not the kind of job you apply for. I married into it.
Nice to hear.
Thank you. And very nice to just thank you again for having me.
Thordur O. Thordarson, the manager of the Icelandic Phallological Museum. You can go to my website at thestuffile.com to the page for this show, which is show number 0668, and you'll find the link to the museum. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestuffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestuffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Here's a brief word about our show and my book. If you become a regular Patreon patron of the Stuff File program, I'll give you an e-version of my book, Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. It's easy to do. Just go to patreon.com and become a patron to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. So, join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. Sign up at patreon.com/The Stuff File program.
Latitude 47 degrees 14 minutes north. Longitude 84 degrees 39 minutes west. Location Montreal, Canada. This is the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. Now, the Stuff File presents Andrew Fazekas, the Night Sky Guy. It's radio that's out of this world.
Andrew Fazekas, the Night Sky Guy, is a member of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada and the author of National Geographic's Backyard Guide to the Night Sky. And Andrew, it would appear that Boeing made a successful test flight to the International Space Station. What does that mean going forward, and will that cut into SpaceX's flights to the ISS?
Well, this is really interesting. Yes, I mean, we've seen now finally Boeing's Starliner spacecraft, which is really a competitor to SpaceX's Dragon capsule, which is supposed to, both of these entities are commercial private companies that are now have multi-billion-dollar contracts with NASA to send astronauts to and from the space station, basically building a taxi service. That's what NASA has a contract for. But however, Boeing has seemed to have had a lot of problems getting it off the ground, their Starliner spacecraft. And finally, they had their first uncrewed test. They had a mannequin on board with 15 sensors named Rosie that was basically there to kind of mimic what an astronaut would a live human would actually experience during this 6-day mission. And basically, we saw it unfold fairly well, but it wasn't without problems, Peter. It seems like there, it was a, picture perfect landing and all, but and end to end, the spacecraft performed pretty well. But there were problems with a cooling system on board that would keep the interior of the spacecraft cool. That wasn't working properly. The latching system aboard that would help dock the spacecraft to the space station didn't work as properly as they thought it would. Also, there were a thruster that helps orient the spacecraft. Now, this is I think it's a little bit more of a major issue. Didn't work, and what was a little bit more concerning even than that was that the backup thruster didn't work properly either. So that was something. Then they found upon landing in New Mexico, in the deserts of New Mexico, it was a parachute landing. It looked great, but the recovery crew had to wait an hour before actually touching the spacecraft because there were toxic fumes emanating from the sides of the spacecraft. They think it was due to these are hydrazine propellant, basically byproducts that envelop the spacecraft. And this usually shouldn't be happening. It should dissipate very quickly. And so they had to wait over an hour before being able to wait for that toxic fumes to go away. So, there's still points there that need to be fixed, I think. They're looking at it. Boeing and NASA in their news conference after post recovery said, there's no showstoppers there. They think maybe they can get the first crewed mission of Starliner off the ground before the end of the year. But here we are. SpaceX has been doing this already for 2 years, shuttling astronauts back and forth from the space station. So there's a big catch-up that Boeing has to have. And, you look at the contracts that both companies, SpaceX and Boeing, have with NASA in their commercial crew program. Boeing has a $4.3 billion contract that was awarded to do this, while SpaceX had only a $2.6 billion contract with NASA. So, and look how successful SpaceX has been. So, I don't know. Boeing has a lot to prove to really to see if they can compete with their fellow commercial companies.
Well, bottom line, with all the problems you just described that they had on their maiden flight, if Rosie, the mannequin, was a real person, would she be dead?
No. There were no showstoppers there, but it may have been uncomfortable, may have been a little bit more nerve-wracking, some issues that would have had to been dealt with, but there were no life-endangering events, but these are potential problems. When you can't orient the spacecraft, you can't cool the spacecraft, you don't know why propellants aren't being burnt off in enough time. latching onto the space station. Those docking maneuvers have to, you don't want to have to figure out problems on the fly. So these things should be occurring without a problem, and they have been for SpaceX. So the question is, why is Boeing, which has been in the space exploration game for so many decades, they have a lot on SpaceX in terms of their legacy. Why are they having so many problems?
Well, we've mentioned Boeing in the past on this program, and you just said that they have a long legacy in space travel. Isn't that part of the problem, that what they're doing looks and appears to be somewhat antiquated?
That could very well be, yes. And they've lost a lot of their brain trust to their competitors at SpaceX, Blue Origins, and such, because maybe the way they're doing it is too old school, and they're not pushing the boundaries fast enough. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
It's like Cuba trying to refurbish all those old Chevys. Or maybe it's like Russia with the Lada, which brings up another point. Should they get these things going? Should Boeing get a foothold into doing this and be along with SpaceX going to the International Space Station? Does that sort of cut Russia out when it comes to Russia being the only taxi, especially considering it is the International Space Station, so it's not just Americans and Russians going up there? Will other countries decide to say, well, you know what, we'll go with the States?
Well, it'll depend on, a lot of different factors, price points as well. I mean, there's a lot of talk about how expensive Russian rides are on the Soyuz. We're talking about $70-80 million per seat on a Soyuz spacecraft to go to the space station. There might be, less than half of that, maybe even a quarter the price point in terms of commercial private companies doing the same thing. Maybe even less than that if there's more competition out there. So it's good to have Boeing in the game, and there might be even other companies stepping up in the future so there'll be choices that not only federal agencies will have to make that have their astronaut program, but private entities too. Choices are good. It brings the price point down. And of course, that will lead into also how aggressive, it'll depend on how aggressive the space tourism industry is in the next few years.
And Russia's political system and the war in Ukraine doesn't help Russia's situation at all.
Very messy stuff going on. And, they've tried to shelter the space program, this international space program, the collaborations as much as possible, but it's becoming more difficult. And the fact is, though, as you brought it up, Peter, having Boeing join SpaceX in this ability to do this taxi service really makes the West basically much less reliant on Russians. In fact, Russia has, in the last few years, have really not been stepping up to the level that they should be in terms of their contributions, things that they are required to do. A lot of things are just not up to muster when it comes to Russian participation. And honestly, I don't think it would dare, other than the fact of their idea of peace and collaborative, that idea, the actual day-to-day maintenance of the space station and such can be easily taken over by other entities now.
Getting back to Boeing, it would appear that with all the things and all the issues that they've had in the last several years, Boeing's timetable has been pushed back and back and back, allowing SpaceX to literally blast off before them. So having said that, now that they've had this test flight and they still have issues, does that push Boeing's timetable back even further?
It could very well. Everything is riding on each mission. It's sort of, you're only as good as your last mission in terms of what Boeing is, and they really have so much to prove right now. And SpaceX is just so, I just don't see the competition between the two companies. Really, there is nothing. And I mean, SpaceX has proven itself time and time again. I mean, of course, God forbid if there was some kind of accident with SpaceX, and space travel is inherently extremely risky. If some kind of disaster would befall SpaceX, that would set things back and would even up the game a little bit. But barring that, I mean, I think Boeing is just too far behind. And then you look at what NASA's doing with their SLS system, their space launch system, which is the super rocket booster that they're building. That's a competitor, basically, to the Starship, this mega rocket that the world's largest rocket, bigger than even the Apollo Saturn rocket that took us to the moon in the Apollo era. That even NASA's mega rocket is way behind schedule and way over budget. Like, it's crazy. And there's a lot of people in the space community are wondering why are they even pursuing it when NASA's already courting SpaceX to be the launch vehicle for their return to the moon, their Artemis missions. So we'll see where this is going. But the more competition there is, the better it is.
Are there other competitors besides the three you just mentioned?
Well, there are other smaller, more niche space engineering companies that are building components to the Artemis mission and to other international space agencies that are relying on it, including Canada and Japan and the European Space Agency. But the heavyweight by far right now is SpaceX, and they don't even really have any big competitors. Boeing's trying to be, but and maybe Blue Origin's but they're fallen behind. I mean, what is Blue Origin's doing right now? Big question mark. And the corporate culture there seems to be toxic under Jeff Bezos. So we'll see where it goes. This is a Wild West new frontier, Peter, when it comes to space exploration. Now that we really have a blossoming private sector.
Fascinating stuff indeed. There was so much more I wanted to get to. The Milky Way black hole, water on Mars, and the U.S. military on UFOs, but we've run out of time.
We always do. We have so much fun.
But I know what we can do. We can go to Patreon and put all that stuff as a Patreon reward extra. Are you up for it?
Oh, are you kidding? I've got this huge amount of stuff I wanna talk about, so let's do that.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You bet. Clear skies.
Andrew Fazekas, the Night Sky Guy, and the author of National Geographic's Backyard Guide to the Night Sky. You can check out his website at thenightskyguy.com. You can go to my website at thestuffile.com to the page for this show, which is show number 0668, and you'll find links to Andrew's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. And Patreon subscribers, you can hear more of Andrew as a Patreon reward extra, where we'll discuss the Milky Way black hole, water on Mars, and the U.S. military on UFOs. Just go to our Patreon page, and if you're not already a member, become one of the selected patrons of the show. Visit patreon.com/The Stuff File Program. You're listening to The Stuff File Program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. We still have an Idiot of the Day coming your way on the program, but we've got a few more Stuff File news stories to share with you right here, right now. So let's get to it. The Cape Coral, Florida Chamber of Commerce called police to report a suspicious woman at their office. The woman, they said, had been there for over an hour and had threatened to bring a fake bomb to her child's school to disrupt its graduation ceremonies. She told them she'd feel bad that the kids would be scared, but she really needed to be heard and was making a statement inspired by the 2002 film John Q. 39-year-old Tracy Marie Adeline Carter was arrested and allegedly admitted to police she was upset because her child was not being allowed to graduate at Oasis High School because of disciplinary issues. Gee, I wonder where the kid got that kind of behavior from. In Evansville, Indiana, police arrested a driver who was 3.5 times above the legal alcohol limit after at least 5 people called 911. Witnesses reported seeing an SUV hit an expressway median. They say the crash caused a flat tire and also caused the car to smoke, but the driver kept going. Other callers say the driver was all over the road and now missing a front tire. He eventually stopped at a car dealership and appeared super drunk. Dealership employees told police the driver, 30-year-old Jordan Mattingly, was trying to sell his SUV. Police say he had swelling and scratches as if he had just been in a crash. They say Mattingly smelled of alcohol and almost fell several times. Officers say he tested .291 on the portable breath test. Inside his SUV, they found 4 Loco cans and a can of White Claw. Mattingly is facing several charges. Bonus points: Mattingly is the son of the manager of the Miami Marlins and former Yankee baseball star Don Mattingly. Dad must be so proud. His son has completely struck out. And now, boys and girls, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. The Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
39-year-old Moise Dorsalin was upset when he dropped by the Palm Beach County, Florida Sheriff's Office. He demanded that they take down photos of him from their Facebook page. The department had posted the photos to ask the public for information about a theft at a gas station. The business's security camera caught the theft of someone's phone. So, were these photos of Dorsalin? Police say he admitted yes, they were, and also admitted to taking the phone. He was arrested. This is a first, the PBSO said in an update. Yep, but you gotta ask the question, why? Oh, why? If your likeness is put up on a police department's Facebook page because they're looking for someone who stole a cell phone, and you go to the police station to complain about your likeness up on their Facebook page, and you did steal the cell phone in question, then that brings us full circle by asking, why would you demand that the department take down said evidence of your said crime? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0668. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestufffile.com, and once again, Stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links in all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0668. Email me at peter@thestufffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Twitter as P.A. Holder, and don't forget to check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including KDXRadio.com, TrueTalkRadio.com, streaming on Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio, and over the air on World FM in New Zealand, MediaCore in Singapore, WLSLLP-FM in Dade City, Florida, CKUW-FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, and local 107.3 FM in St. John. That's it. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. The Stuff File reminds you never try to drown your sorrows. They'll just learn to swim anyway.